It really is great to be here with you. I have enormous respect for the University of Chicago and especially the Graduate School of Business, and it's my honor to have the opportunity to speak to so many of you who are either currently enrolled or part of the 39,000 who have graduated from this very unique school of learning. I'll be talking at you for a little while, but I really want to talk with you and answer your questions, because when it comes especially to the topic of leadership, I don't think you can teach leadership. I think you can emulate and listen and learn and talk, but I don't think you can teach it. So I would like to share with you some of my leadership biases and then get to your questions. One of the things I would like to do is address the younger folks in the room, and I'll let each of you decide if you belong in that category. Bob, that's not you. But if I try to be something to everybody, I'll be nothing to anybody, so I'm going to try to focus a little bit on some of the younger folks, if I may. And I guess the thing I would recommend to you most would be you have to be very careful in the way you select your parents. If you missed that opportunity, the next best thing you can do for yourself is be very careful and precise in where you pick to work. That may sound interesting coming from a guy who is about to have 40 years in the U.S. Marine Corps working exactly where I was told to go work. But the truth of the matter is, as I've thought back about the time I've had in service, that about 25%, if I'm generous with myself, has to do with hard work on my part, and about 75% has to do with the good luck of being immersed with groups of leaders, especially when I was young, who through their example taught me more than I could have ever learned in the academic environment. And therefore, for you who have the ability to pick and choose where you work, I commend to you that you take time, get out on the internet, go visit the companies, talk to the folks who work there. And if you want to make widgets, by all means, make widgets. But there is more than one company out there probably that does that. And you ought to get into the company whose leadership are the kinds of individuals who think and talk and act and lead the way that you would like to be led. Once you've selected that, then I would recommend to you that you grow where you are planted. Each of us has our own knowledge about who we are and where we best fit. I have come to trust other people's judgment about where I best fit. And once you're in the company that you want to work for, if you do not go to the exact job in that company that you prefer, if you will apply yourself and work hard at that job and do a good job in that job, I guarantee you, you will get promoted and get other good jobs. Put simply, there are more good jobs than there are good people. And if you will grow where you are planted, you will continue to get good jobs. Next, I would recommend to you that you make decisions. That's why you've been hired. I learned this lesson sort of the hard way, I guess, in Vietnam. I'd been there about 3 months, and we had been in Hue City during Tet Offensive for a while. And then we went on our first company-sized, 150, 200 guys patrol outside of Hue City, and my platoon had the lead of this long column of individuals. And we got to a decision point in the road, and I called back to my company commander and said, "Do you want me to go left or do you want me to go right?" And he said, "Go left." And a little while later on the patrol, he called back again and said, "Do you want me to go left or you want me to go right?" He said, "Go right." A little bit later in the patrol, I called back again, and if you take out the curse words, he didn't say anything. But the message was very clear. It was, Lieutenant, you're there for a reason. Make decisions. And I promised myself that if I ever got in trouble again, which I have, that it'd be for doing something and not for waiting for something to happen. And that has made all the difference. Not only from the standpoint of how I view what I'm supposed to do myself, but in how I view what my subordinates are supposed to do. If you have an organization that waits on the leader to make all decisions, you'll probably get 10 things done pretty well. If everybody in that organization knows that you're supposed to make decisions, you probably get 100 things done, 90 of them pretty darn well. And I'll take cleaning up the last 10% to get those other 90 things. As far as personal characteristics, I have come to really admire courage. Now, in my line of work, the first kind of courage I came in contact with was the obvious courage on a battlefield. And nothing will ever erase what I've learned about that kind of personal courage in combat. But I've also come in later life to appreciate the kind of courage around a conference table where very powerful people are having a discussion. And the discussion is going in the direction of one kind of a solution. And somebody around that table will say, I see it differently, and here's why. First, that takes enormous courage. In combat, if you're wrong, you die. And in an atmosphere like that, if you're wrong, you have to live with it. And that's a very different kind of threat and a very different kind of courage to overcome. But I've also learned that in organizations that foster that and encourage that, that individuals who have the opportunity to speak their mind and are encouraged to, even when they turn out to be wrong, are respected because folks know that if you invite so-and-so to a meeting, he or she is going to tell you what they're thinking. And we're going to benefit from that independent thought, even if we don't always agree with that independent thought. That leads me to checking your moral compass. Again, in Vietnam, I learned about myself. And I learned about the kinds of emotions that overcome you in the heat of battle. And I learned that even though I thought I had a pretty solid foundation on what I would let myself do and what I would not let myself do, that there were moments when I thought about doing things that in the cold light of day would have been the wrong thing to do. We're not always in combat. But in the business world, there are enormous pressures to do things. And when you walk into a meeting and you know that there's a topic that's going to be discussed, if you have the opportunity to think through who you are walking in the door and who you want to be when you walk out the door, you have a much better chance of knowing when your moral compass is being tested and of doing the right thing. The problem with those kinds of challenges is that they come when you least expect them. And if you have a solid foundation, and if you thought through at the beginning of the day who you want to be at the end of the day, then the probability of you appreciating the person in the mirror the next morning is much higher. It really boils down to your personal integrity. And you start out in the business world with your name and your integrity. Nobody can take either one of them away from you. You can forfeit your integrity. I cannot think of a sadder moment in life for anybody than to be a very successful business person and to have lost one's integrity in the process of being, quote, successful. When you have a chance to think through who you are and who you want to be, I commend it to you, especially if you have the privilege of being in this great schoolhouse right now. Because at the least opportune time, when you have a mortgage and kids and this aspiration to promotion, you may be asked to do something, either directly or indirectly, that's not the person you want to be. Last thing that I would say, as far as my personal biases are concerned with regard to leadership, and if you have heard me say nothing else, I would ask you to please remember this. Take care of those in your charge. I am a walking, living example that you don't have to be the world's smartest person to be successful. What I have learned along the way, in retrospect, is that by trying to take care of the folks in my charge, they have taken care of me. And an organization that knows that its leader cares will always freely give more than anybody could ever demand. Sometimes it's hard to know, how do you take care of somebody? You don't just walk up to them and say, hey, what do you need? Maybe you do. But I think it's simply a matter of getting out, walking the factory floor, walking whatever floor it is, talking to the folks you work with, beside, and for, and on top of, and just be available. And in the course of discussions, along the way, things that people need will become evident. And if you can take action on those needs without them having to ask, you will create the climate inside of which great trust and friendship can develop. And it energizes an organization better than anything I know. I appreciate you listening to me, and what I'd like to do, if I could, is stop talking at you and answer your questions.